Hey, this is Zach, CEO of Genzio, here at the GridX Media Room, live with
William from MetaZone.
welcome. How's Consensus been for you so far?
Well, Consensus, I felt like was a lot better than ETH Denver. I think the coordination, everything that's set up in Consensus was just a little bit better. I found that there's a lot more people, a lot more events where we can actually have a conversation rather than just like going to talks and stuff. So I thought it was really good.
Nice. And can you tell us a little bit about your project?
Sure, yeah. So MetaZone, we started this project in 2019, and this was way before the Metaverse really had its mania. And so we started in 2019, and it really originated from a podcast that we started. And so me and my co-hosts were just talking about crypto, and then we discovered this project called Decentraland.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and so we looked into Decentraland, and at the time in 2019, it was just a grid of squares where people had purchased land in 2017. And so we were really interested. It was like people buying these NFTs that represent land. Like, this is pretty cool. So we ended up interviewing Maddie, which is a DCL blogger, real huge on Twitter now, but at the time he had like 7,000 or 8,000 followers. So we interviewed him. He was the only one talking about Decentraland at the time. And so we interviewed him. My brother, who's a full stack developer, listened to that podcast, and he was like, hey, let's try to do something in Decentraland. And he discovered a whole host of problems, and he was like, all right, we got to build something for this because it's too difficult to deploy, too difficult to make stuff. And he's the one who completely built MetaZone. And so fast forward a few years later, we ended up generating around 4 million mana. So at the peak, it was like $20 million. And most of that went to our creators. So MetaZone is really catered to developers and creators to make apps for the metaverse. So think of an app that you would download to your phone. Well, in this case, you would purchase an app on our marketplace, and then you would deploy that on land in this digital environment. And so an app could be anywhere from like a business or a DeFi that you could just package up into an NFT, deploy it on land, and all of a sudden you have a business on your virtual land. And so that's what we focus on, is just businesses as NFTs, DeFi, all kinds of stuff.
Can you maybe give some examples of businesses that have? Yeah, no, sure, cool.
Yeah, so one of the most interesting things that we discovered, our creators are very creative, right? They come up with all kinds of stuff. And we've seen that in all kinds of different environments, right? We have, like in Decentraland, they opened up making wearables from the community instead of the wearables coming from Decentraland organization. When that happened, we saw an explosion of all different kinds of wearables that people can just purchase and use as their avatar. And so when we built our platform, we had tons of submissions of all kinds of stuff. And one of the most interesting submission was a DEX as an NFT.
So DEX, yeah, an NFT
in the metaverse, yeah, the centralized exchange as an NFT. So someone submitted a DEX. We packaged that up as an NFT. People purchased this DEX. They deployed it in their land. And now you can go into the metaverse, swap tokens. Let's say, for example, you're trying to access a game in the metaverse that required a specific token. You could go to this DEX, swap it while you're still in world, and then go on off with your game. And the cool thing about this is when the way we set everything up is that when transactions occur on land with this content, the transaction has fees, which is split to the landowner, the content creator, and then MetaZone gets a cut. And so what this does, it ends up incentivizing participation from the entire economy, the landowner, content creators, players. And we feel like this is going to be the model that is more aligned with the predictions that everyone is saying is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And but if you jump into the metaverse today, it's hard to kind of see that that's even a possibility. But we feel like building the application layer is going to enable a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
So yeah, I totally agree. I think this has been a dream for a lot of gamers for a long time to be able to share in kind of the revenue that's created from our creations in metaverses. Me, like particularly for me, I played Minecraft a lot.
Yes.
So I build these really cool, elaborate worlds. And you know, it's not like I'm making any money as a kid if those become very popular. And so I think this is a very interesting concept. I think where some people have, seen some pitfalls in the past is things like graphics or usability.
Sure.
So I guess how do you address some of those? And what is your platform actually built on? What does it look like?
Sure. So when it comes to kind of like what the virtual environment looks like, we've seen examples, Fortnite, Minecraft. They're not the most beautiful games we've ever seen, but they have the most people. It's fun, right?
That's true. They're getting more beautiful.
Absolutely, they're getting more beautiful, and it's just it's a function of like the computational power. The more power you have, the more beautiful it can be, right? And so even Minecraft, they have like they have all these like additions to the visual aspect of Minecraft where they do ray tracing. They have like all this advanced technology now. The point is that it's not necessarily the beauty that brings in people. It's more the interactions, the activity. Are your friends playing? Things like that. And so right now the metaverse doesn't look all that attractive in comparison to these like Web 2 types of experiences. However, blockchain and Web3 enable something kind of new, which enables new functionalities. So in our case, we have this system where when our creators make content, which is called metas, by the way, and it's crazy now that, you know, we're using the term meta because now everybody's using meta. But in 2019...
I wonder why that is.
Right. Yeah, in 2019, it was us, MetaZone, it was MetaMask, and like Meta Factory. Those are the only three that I can remember that had meta anything. And then all of a sudden in, I think it was 2021 or 2022, Facebook changed their name to Meta, and all of a sudden there was like this metaverse mania. But the most important thing is that on MetaZone, when creators submit content, which we call metas, they submit it in a way where it's sort of like a Web3 business model where it's completely distributed. So if we were working with a brand like, let's say like Tommy Hilfiger, these brands would just exist in the metaverse only in one location. Right. People would come and like experience whatever it was that they were experiencing, and then that was it. So what we do instead is, if we were working with a brand like that, we would help them create a meta that is completely distributed as a business. So for example, it could be a kiosk branded as Tommy Hilfiger. That kiosk can be purchased by their community, hosted in several lands instead of just one location. And now Tommy Hilfiger has a bunch of like affiliate links, people pushing the brand because they're incentivized to, because any time that people interact with that kiosk to purchase a wearable, they get a cut of the transaction. Tommy Hilfiger gets the rest of the cut. And of course, MetaZone gets a cut as well because we're hosting the whole thing, right? But that's the new type of thinking that we want brands to kind of think about. Instead of just being in a single location, create content that people can purchase and then deploy all over the place.
That makes sense, like wearing a t-shirt with Coca-Cola.
Exactly right.
So let's talk about adoption.
Sure.
How many users on the platform? How's that growth been through the bear market, bull market? Now, what's that looking like for you?
Yeah, so in terms of adoption, it matches sort of like the sentiment and like the user base that we see just in crypto in general. So when things are up, there's a lot more activity, and when things are down, there's a lot less. But what we noticed was that those who created content ended up selling, you know, a reasonable amount. They stick around, they continue making content. And one of our creators, or several of our creators, have generated like over $20,000 just using our platform.
Oh, wow.
In like the first year of just like actually leveraging the technology.
That's for real. That can be a huge boost for people.
Well, absolutely. And then on top of this is like, we've seen like platforms like Sketchfab that are just 3D content, and you just purchase that 3D content. And really, that content is like for developers. It's like if you need a zombie, you just go there, download a 3D model of a zombie, and then you can kind of animate it however you want, things like that. But in our case, these 3D models come with like code, right? They're functions. So you can imagine someone submitting a zombie 3D model that has code where you deploy this application, and then all of a sudden on your land, it's just a zombie just walking around. And so it adds to the aesthetics. You could use that to be part of the game.
Like a dance or something.
Yeah, like a dance. Yeah, exactly. And so think of MetaZone as more of like a platform for applications that have some functionality rather than just like 3D models. So that's, and so far the adoption is just, it matches the cycles really.
See, I think that's very interesting, and we have to. I don't know if you agree with this. I think at some point we have to break past those boom and bust cycles in terms of adoption, because it's like gamers are going to game, you know, during whatever market. So it's like, how do we get in those mainstream people playing Minecraft? Like, they don't care about stock price of ETH or Bitcoin. Like,
sure, that's a good point.
Yeah,
I think there needs to be like a maturity in this industry where we start making games that are just attractive from like a gameplay perspective, like fun to play. and we get sort of like a critical mass of players that bring their friends. Because when it comes to like Fortnite and Minecraft, it's not so much the functions of the games that is the fact that you're playing with your friends. Because in a lot of cases, if you watch a bunch of YouTube videos on Fortnite, there are people just screwing around and hanging out with each other rather than like going, and playing the game itself. And the same goes with Minecraft. So we need a little bit more of that. I think right now it's more difficult to integrate experiences like that with Web3, because if you think about it, if you have like Minecraft and you start adding Web3 content to it, it's like, now I have to limit how many swords exist because they're NFTs now. I have to limit how many enemies I can destroy because these Web3 aspects degrade, and then you have to spend money to upgrade. Like, it's more difficult to implement. And so I think that's why there's like a discrepancy in a sense on what's going on with Web 2 versus Web 3 games.
The usability, the player experience, what's the game like? Like, and what system is it built on? Is it a real engine?
Sure.
What does it look like? And then the actual the tech, and then also the blockchain tech. Like, and why did you choose to go that route?
Sure. So think of it this way. When we talk about the metaverse, MetaZone really focuses on like general purpose metaverses. So think of each metaverse that we support as like an operating system. And so that operating system, they have updates, they make new functionalities that we leverage on our platform. And so when creators make content, they're making content on top of each of the operating systems that we support. So right now we support Decentraland. In the future is going to be HyperFi, the other side, which is the Bored Apes world. And so each one is a different operating system. So when it comes to, whether we're using a Unity engine or Unreal, it really depends on the operating systems. For example, Decentraland uses Unity. I believe the other side is using Unreal Engine. HyperFi, I think they're using Unity, or maybe it's Unreal. But the idea here is that creators, they submit content to MetaZone, and eventually they'll submit it once, and then people will purchase these NFTs, and they'll deploy them in multiple metaverses.
So if I wanted to do like a GridX or like a Genzio swag, I could put that out.
100%, yeah.
Everybody could be rocking it.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, that's really cool. I think, this makes a lot of sense. It's something that a lot of people are trying to do. How do you think that, you might have a competitive advantage in this, because this is a very like hot space, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
There's Metaverse Mania.
Sure. Yeah, so going back to GridX, so you can come up with swag, but think of it more as a business. So instead of like just thinking about the swag, think of that as the supply of the product that you're going to be supplying your business to. So instead of like the swag itself, think of like the kiosk, right? Your kiosk is your business that people would go and purchase and deploy, and then you supply the kiosk with merchandise. And then the landowner and the meta owner itself, because there could be two separate people, right? A landowner and a meta owner can collaborate to deploy on that land, and of course the transactions are split between the two of them as well. But the idea is that you're selling businesses as NFTs, and then the people who are purchasing these businesses are pushing your merchandise so they can get a cut of the transaction. So now when it comes to the idea of the blockchain aspect, is we ended up using Polygon Studios, which is Matic, and the whole idea is just to make transactions cheaper, easier, faster.
Definitely.
And one of the more important aspects is we built the MVP, right? We wanted to make sure that creators wanted to use it, people wanted to buy these NFTs, but the whole idea is that we want to be network agnostic, right? So if you are a creator and you come from the Solana, universe, you want to create Solana NFTs and still deploy them in multiple metaverses. We want to enable that. So that's going to be in the longer term roadmap for us.
Okay, so very multi-chain future coming. I guess, like, where do you see the most interest? Is it on the creator side? And because it sounds like because of the kind of adoption,
Sure.
And do you think that creators are rushing in, and, what's that been like,
Yeah, so there's sort of a learning curve just because of what we're doing. It's just a little bit different than what people would expect, because right now when you see what's out there in terms of the metaverse and Web3, it's just more like GLB objects, which is just 3D models, right, that really don't do anything. And so there's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not so much, because when you talk to developers, they know about iOS and Android and, you know, all these different operating systems. So they're used to building applications. So now we're sort of kind of transitioning the idea of just building applications that run on a 2D interface to build applications that run on a 3D interface. And with that, there's been a lot more attraction to building that stuff, just because there's already like an inherent sunk cost by the landowners, right? They spent thousands of dollars on land. So what they're looking for is either to flip the land, which is either waiting years to flip it, or how about you supply them with businesses or supply them with interactive content to bring activity to their land, to maybe sell some wearables or sell advertisement space, whatever it is. And so that's been a lot more attractive. And but then again, it's more about like the understanding that this is the new dynamic that's happening in the 3D space. So we do have to do a little, there's a little bit of a learning curve when it comes to developers making content for the metaverse.
Gotcha. And just kind of, I guess to kind of wrap up here, what can people look forward to see more from you guys in 2023, the future? You know, what are some announcements that you might have, either product related, community wise, that you want people to know? And
Yeah, so we're happy to announce that we just raised the seed round, and through appreciate it. Yes, we raised a seed round with Safirmian and CMT and a few others, and these guys have been extremely supportive with everything that we're doing. They understand that the application layer of the metaverse is going to enable at least partly the $1 trillion economy that we're expecting. And when it comes to the $1 trillion economy, there's macro forces that are encouraging that. They're kind of like leading into that direction, like automation and AI. They're going to take so many jobs away that there's likely going to be sort of like a different economic layer outside of the physical space, and that economic layer might transition to the digital space. So I think there's a huge opportunity for developers, and our investors see that, and it's just more about getting developers transitioning away from like the traditional 2D environment, which we're all been using for the last 30 years or so, to more of like a 3D interactive immersive space. And so it's been interesting kind of seeing, you know, how quickly developers are able to adopt to 2D versus 3D. And so it's been kind of exciting just to see how creators take advantage of that, and the creativity, like a DEX as an NFT was something that we never could have imagined. But now we can bring in DeFi, we can bring in all kinds of like yield farms in the metaverse, and everything that the craziness that we see in crypto, all of it can be happening in the metaverse. So that's what's most exciting about what we're doing.
And where can people find out more information about you guys? Social media, website, where's the best place to find more information and get in touch?
Yeah, so there's a couple of places. So Twitter, it's at MetaZone.io, and the website is MetaZone.io. We do have a podcast. On the podcast, we generally focus on just crypto and just in general, like ZK, ordinals, like PFP projects. Like we talk about everything. And so that podcast is called theblockrunner.com. I guess one of the interesting things that are happening is like we talk about crypto, but there's all the stuff that we talk about can exist in the metaverse, and it's like we're looking for partners and anyone who wants to exist in the metaverse in a more profitable, marketable way, rather than just like, you know, putting a building in the metaverse and like that's it. So yeah, that's sort of our main focus at the moment. But yeah, we're happy to kind of spread the news that we got the seed round and
what was the number? Can you say?
Yes, $3 million.
$3 million at a valuation of?
The valuation is not disclosed.
All right. Well, congratulations on the seed round.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing more MetaZone.
Sure, I appreciate it.
So, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Zach.